Hello and welcome everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar on developing your circularity strategy. Over the next hour, we will explore what circularity really means, which frameworks can guide you, and how you can start implementing it in your organization. My name is Karin Ekberg, and I'm the CEO of Leadership and Sustainability and the founder of the company. I have a long experience in the sustainability area and have worked at Adidas, among other companies, where I was responsible for environment globally. And before that, I worked in another company building up the sustainability work. And leadership and sustainability, we are HIG FEM, FSLM verifiers. We work on many other programs. But for this webinar, what is most important is that we are cradle-to-cradle assessors. And here I will already hand over to Kim to introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you, Karin. My name is Kim, and I am a sustainability manager at Leadership and Sustainability. I've joined the company 4 years ago as a working student, and since then, I have also joined as a full-time employee, and I am now co-leading the supply chain team by managing verification and certification schemes globally. And also recently, I have completed my training to become an approved cradle-to-cradle assessor. So with that, I would like to go through some basics of the Zoom webinar platform. We would like to mention that the audience will be muted during the whole webinar, just to ensure best audio quality for everyone. And if the group size allows us, then we may also unmute you for better discussion when we later have questions. But please feel free to send us any questions you may have during the presentation via the question function. On the right-hand side, you can see a screenshot of the question function, and there you find the button to open the chat window where you can then type in your question and then send it to us. And maybe it's also good to know for you that at the end or after this webinar, we will also provide you with a link to download the presentation in a follow-up email. Yes, now coming to the agenda and what we'll cover today, we will start with the basics on what circularity is and why it matters. And then we will explore some key methods, standards, and also concepts. After that, we will take a closer look at the cradle-to-cradle assessment, especially onto the version 5.0. And lastly, we'll wrap up with some practical steps before we can then go into questions and discussion. So what is circularity? Most industries today still operate in a linear model with the take, make, and waste. So we extract raw materials, produce goods, and eventually also dispose of them. This leads to resource depletion, environmental damage, but also increasing the regulatory pressure. And for textiles, this is especially critical due to the high volumes and short product life cycles. Circularity is about fundamentally rethinking this model. And instead of creating waste, we design it out from the beginning. So products and materials are kept in use for as long as possible, and the natural systems are then regenerated rather than degraded. On the next slide, you see two different systems. So to simplify, there are linear systems that end in waste, while on the other hand, the circular systems aim to loop materials back into use. So that means that reuse, repair, recycling, and regeneration are built into the system from the start onwards. And why does that matter now? The production of clothing has actually doubled in just the last 15 years. And at the same time, market prices have dropped, which means that clothes are often treated as disposable. As a result, about 75% of clothing ends up in landfills. That is a massive waste of both resources and value. And currently, only about 1% of clothing can actually be considered as circular, being designed and produced in a way that keeps materials in use. That leaves enormous room for improvement. The potential is huge, and by reusing resources and closing the loop, the industry can significantly reduce waste and also its environmental impact. The European Union has already set ambitious goals, targeting a 100% circular economy by 2050. That means that this transition isn't optional, but it's actually a requirement. And when the European Union talks about an 100% circular economy, that means that we don't want zero waste ever. It means that we want to redesign the economy so that all materials stay in use as long as possible and that waste is minimized and turned back into resources. This vision is actually part of the European Union's long-term sustainability agenda, and especially under the European Green Deal. In addition to that, new legislation will also soon require companies to back up any circular claims with validated data. For example, there's the Empowering Consumers for the Green Transition Directive that is already adopted. That updates existing consumer protection rules. And with this directive, it explicitly targets greenwashing by banning vague environmental claims, for example, green or climate neutral, unless it is proven. So it is required for any claims about durability, repairability, and also recyclability. Moreover, the Green Claims Directive is upcoming. This directive has been proposed by the European Commission in March 2023, with the full name being Directive on Substantiation and Communication of Explicit Environmental Claims. And the core idea here is that any environmental claim, for example, circular or recyclable, must be scientifically substantiated and verified before being used. So it's not just the policymakers driving this, but also investors and consumers are also demanding more transparency and real action, pushing the industry toward change. In textiles, circularity is especially important. The industry uses vast amounts of water and energy and also generates significant waste, which contributes to pollution through dyes and microplastics. And at the same time, supply chains are really complex, making transparency a challenge here. But circularity is not just about compliance, it's also a business opportunity. Companies can reduce material cost, mitigate risk, and differentiate their brand, and prepare for upcoming regulations. So when we talk about product circularity, it really comes down to the three core pillars. We first have circular design. This means that designing products from the start is done so that they can be reused, repaired, or recycled. And it's about thinking beyond a single life cycle and planning instead for durability and resource recovery. Second, we have circular sourcing. That means we use more recycled and renewable inputs in the production. This will reduce reliance on virgin raw materials and also helps to lower the environmental footprint of textiles. And the third pillar is circular systems. That means that we put the right infrastructure in place. This includes, for example, take-back programs, recovery processes, and data sharing along the supply chain so that products can truly stay in circulation. And together, these three pillars form the foundation of a circular textile economy. And next, we will walk through some methods, standards, and concepts. So basically, there are several strategies to enable circularity. Recycling is the well known, but it's only one piece. We also can reuse, repair, remanufacture, and there's also new business models, for example, product as a service, that are equally important. In the circular economy, there's a concept distinguishing between the biological and the technical cycle. So here you see the biological cycle that relates to materials that can safely return to nature after the use. For example, here could be natural fibers or biodegradable materials. These can then be composted or regenerated, and by closing the loop in an environmentally safe way. On the other hand, we also have the technical cycle that deals with materials that need to be recovered, reused, or recycled, but without losing their quality. For examples, that could be metals, synthetic textiles, or durable components. These materials are kept in circulation through repair, refurbishment, or recycling systems. And understanding these two cycles is key to designing a circular product and system, because each requires different strategies and infrastructure. And ultimately, combining both cycles helps us to move toward a system where waste doesn't exist and resources are continuously renewed. Design plays a critical role, so products should be durable, easy to disassemble, and made from safe materials, and ideally also modular. These principles determine whether circularity is even possible later on. There are several frameworks that can guide your journey here. Cradle to Cradle is one of the most comprehensive, and we will talk deeper on that later on in this presentation. But there's also the Ellen MacArthur Foundation that has defined widely adopted principle, but also ISO is developing global standards and certifications like GRS focus on recycled content. So the Ellen MacArthur Foundation defines 3 core principles that underpin the circular economy. These are widely used across industries, including textiles, and a simple but powerful framework. The first principle is to design out waste and pollution. This principle focuses on preventing problems before they even happen. So instead of managing waste after production, products and systems are designed so that waste is not created in the first place, that harmful substances are eliminated, and processes are efficient and clean. As a textile example, that would, for example, be designing garments without any toxic dyes or mixed fibers that are hard to recycle. The second principle is to keep products and materials in use. The goal here is to maximize the value of materials over the time. This would include reusing, repairing, and maintenance, but also remanufacturing and recycling as a last step. Again, for textile, the example would be a resale platform, repair services, or also fiber-to-fiber recycling systems. And the last principle is regenerating natural systems. That goes beyond doing less harm and aims to actively improve the environment. This involves returning valuable nutrients to the soil, supporting biodiversity, and using renewable resources. In the textile industry, that would be, for example, sourcing cotton from regenerative agriculture that improves soil health. And together, they shift businesses from a linear take, make, waste model to a restorative and regenerative system. Then there's also the ISO 59004 that defines a set of principles to guide organizations in transitioning from linear to circular systems. These principles are aligned with global frameworks, but they are also structured for practical implementation and standardization. And the core circular economy principles are first systems thinking. So organizations should view their activities as part of a larger interconnected system, including their supply chains, ecosystems, and society. This means it should avoid silo thinking, but instead consider upstream and downstream impacts and optimize the whole system, not just individual parts. Secondly, there's value creation. That means that circularity is not just environmental, but it also should create value across multiple dimensions, such as the economic, environmental, but also the social values. Then there's value sharing. The value created should be distributed fairly across all stakeholders. With that, the suppliers, manufacturers, and customers all benefit from it, and it encourages collaboration and long-term partnerships and supports equitable business ecosystems. Then we have resource stewardships, where resources efficiently as responsibly and are minimizing waste and preserving natural capital. It reduces virgin material use, prioritizes renewable and recycled inputs, and prevents resource leakage. Then fifth, we have resource traceability. That means to maintain visibility over materials and flows by knowing what materials are used and where they come from. This can be done by tracking products through the life cycle and also by enabling better recovery and recycling. And lastly, there's the ecosystem resilience. That means circular systems should strengthen natural and economic ecosystems by supporting biodiversity and healthy ecosystems, by building resilient supply chains, and also by reducing dependency on scarce resources. So in short, the ISO 59004 translates circular economy ideas into practical, actionable principles that companies can apply across different industries and including the textiles industry. Another important framework I'd like to briefly introduce is the Global Circularity Protocol, or GCP, version 1.0. This protocol has been co-developed by the World Business Council for Sustainable Development and the UNEP One Planet Network, which already signals that it is designed to be both practical and also globally relevant. What makes the GCP particularly interesting is their focus. Unlike other frameworks, they operate specifically at the corporate business unit and product portfolio level. So that means it's highly relevant for companies that want to actually implement and measure circularity across their operations. This protocol is structured into a series of stages, which you can also see illustrated on the slide here. And these stages guide companies through a step-by-step approach. So from understanding their current state to setting goals, but also measuring and improving their performance. And rather than being just a conceptual framework, GCP is really about operationalizing circularity within the organization. So given the depth of this protocol, we're only touching on it briefly today. However, if there's interest from the audience, then we're happy to organize a dedicated webinar about this and going into more detail on how to apply it in practice. You can just comment that into the question function if there's any interested. And to move toward circularity, you really need to think in life cycles. So from raw materials extractions to production, use, and end of life. And each stage has impacts and opportunities. And circularity often requires new business models. So examples would include rental, resale, repair services, but also subscription models. These extend the product life and create even new revenue streams after the first use. But of course, there's also challenges to it. The costs are often perceived as high, the infrastructure may be lacking in the first place, and also we know that supply chains are really complex and that knowledge gaps exist within different organizations. The key here is to start small. You can start with pilot projects that allow you to test first ideas, learn quickly, and then build internal support. And it's important to collaborate across the different departments and also with external partners. And now I hand over to Karin, and she will walk you through the Cradle to Cradle certification.
Thank you so much, Kim, and sorry for being a bit slow with moving forward the slides. I was reading a very, very long comment from one of our friends here, so I got stuck a bit. Sorry for that. Thanks so much, Kim. And let me now talk about the specific requirements in the Cradle to Cradle standard and the version 5.0, which was very recently published. And so what is the Cradle to Cradle standard by version 5.0? It is the latest evolution of the standard. It lowers the bar significantly, actually, compared to the previous version, the version 4.1, with more achievable requirements, a clearer product focus, and also a greater focus on measurable impact and the actual production. So there is less focus on the overhead, so to say, and on the group strategies, etc. Much more focus on product and production. But the concept as such has stayed the same. We still have the same areas that are important to the Cradle to Cradle certified standard. And so it focuses on the areas that you can see here: material health, product circularity, clean air and climate protection, water and soil stewardship, and social fairness. And so material health is making sure that the materials are safe for humans and the environment. Very much focus on the chemicals in the product. Product circularity is enabling a circular economy through product and process design. And clean air and climate protection is focusing also very much on, as it says, climate, so generating clean energy and also protecting the environment thereby. Water and soil stewardship, safeguarding air, water, but also soil resources. And social fairness, embracing safe, fair, and equitable labor practices that advance human rights and strong communities. And now, more recently, since the standard 4.1, there are actually 3 different certifications that you can do. So there is, on the one hand side, the full certification, where you cover all topics. And then there is also the circularity standard, focusing on circularity and material health. And then you have the material health certification. So you can do the full certification with all the different topics, or you can focus on, for example, circularity and or material health. And the achievement levels, and this is important to understand in order to see how the standard is structured and what the structure is. The certification has multiple achievement levels, so from bronze to platinum, and each level represents increasing ambition and performance across all categories. And on the next slides, I will walk you through the requirements per category. I'm not going through all the details, but you will see there is still quite a level of detail here. But there is, of course, you can always download the entire standard to see all the details, but I think this will give you a good overview. So when we start with the material health, the requirements are at the bronze level, it is that the product is 75% assessed. But this doesn't mean that you can leave out the remaining 25% because you still need certifications here and a commitment that the 25% is still safe and doesn't include any restricted chemicals. And then you need, of course, to ensure that the product is in compliance with leading chemical regulations and to ensure that the product does not contain any organohalogen substances of special concern or other non-halogenated classes of equivalent concern. And there are then thresholds for this. And now if we move on to the silver level, the product must be assessed to 95%. It also needs to ensure that the product does not contain materials with more than 1% C-bonded halogen by weight, and we have several examples here. You need also to ensure that the product has low VOC emissions and complies with VOC content limits. At gold level, the product and the materials need to be 100% assessed. You need to ensure that the product does not contain any organohalogen substances above the subject to review limits. You need to ensure the product is optimized for material health. You need to ensure that the product has very low VOC emissions or is inherently non-emitting. And finally, at platinum level, which is then the highest level you can reach, all product relevant process chemicals need to be assessed. So everything that goes into the manufacturing process must be assessed. You need to ensure also that 25% of the product is assessed as A or B. So this is the best in class group of chemicals. And you also need to ensure that 50% of the input materials have a material health gold or platinum certificate, or 25% of the input materials. And then there are some different alternatives you can choose from here. And what is also important to know is that you can, when you do your first certification, you can start at bronze level. But every 3 years, you need to renew your certificate. So you need to recertify. And after 6 years of a total certification, you need to move on to the next level. So if you start with bronze, you can stay on bronze during your first certification and during your recertification. But next time you need to move over on to silver. And the ambition should really be that you over time can move on to the highest level, the platinum level. There are some restrictions. There are some products that are inherently not able to reach the platinum level. But in any case, you really should have the ambition to move forward and upwards over time. When we look at product circularity at bronze level, you should define the intended cycling pathways for the product and its materials, which means you need to know what the product will do after its useful life. So what happens with the product after its useful life? Then you need to identify the intended cycling partners. You need to ensure the product has some cycle and or renewable content, so some recycled materials and or renewable content. And you need also to ensure that more than 50% of the materials by weight are compatible with the intended cycling pathways. So still perhaps not the highest level you can imagine, of course. But then if we move on to the silver level, you need to also initiate your cycling partnership. So at bronze level, you actually only need to know which could be your partners. And now you need to initiate the partnerships. You need to ensure that the percentage of cycled and or renewable content is equal or higher than industry average. And you also need to ensure that more than 70% materials by weight are compatible with the intended cycling pathways, compared to the 50% that you had at bronze level. And then for gold level, your partnerships for all intended cycling pathways are initiated, and you need to have the percentage of cycled and or renewable content being consistent with industry leaders. And you need to ensure that more than 90% of the materials by weight are compatible. You need to design the product for disassembly. You need to implement a circular design opportunity. And you also actually need to actively cycle the product. And at the highest level, the platinum level, the percentage of cycled and or renewable content is equal to the absolute technical maximum possible. You need also to ensure that 99% or more of the materials by weight are compatible with the intended cycling pathways. And you need to demonstrate that you have a monitoring program to track the cycling rates and an increase also in cumulative rate and quality. And you can imagine that this is quite complex when you think of products that are being sold to many different regions and countries in the world. You need to actually to know what happens here also on the local market. When we move over to the clean air and climate protection, the requirements at bronze level is that you have to ensure that the final manufacturing facilities comply with air emissions regulations or guidelines. And there are certain rules about what is the final manufacturing facility. So there is a long list of defined manufacturing processes that are counted as the final manufacturing processes. And you also need to quantify the annual electric use and greenhouse gas emissions of the final manufacturing facilities and ensure that 5% is achieved of renewable energy. And at the next level, ensure that 20% renewable energy is achieved or 25% of the embodied emissions that are addressed are offset. At gold level, the 50% target of renewable energy should be met. You need to quantify the embodied emissions, and there are also some additional requirements that I will not go into too much detail here. But at the platinum level, you have to have a third-party critical review of quantification of the greenhouse gas emissions and any EPDs available. So you need to have a greenhouse gas verification. You need to have fully electrified. You need to eliminate on-site greenhouse gas emissions, ensure that 100% of electricity is renewable sourced, and also ensure that 100% of the embodied emissions are addressed or offset. So platinum level, as you can see, is really quite a challenging level. And moving on to the water and soil stewardship, at bronze level, you need to comply with water quality regulations. This is usually not too difficult to do. You need to quantify the water use at the final manufacturing facilities. This is not too difficult to do. You need also to ensure that the chemicals that are entering effluent or sludge are compliant with leading chemicals regulations. And for silver level, you need to implement one best practice conservation technology. You need to ensure that chemicals that are entering effluent and sludge are defined and assessed. You need to ensure that effluent and sludge do not contain recognized substances of concern at the final manufacturing facilities. And I see here someone is raising her hands. Would you like to send us a message in the question function? Let me see. I will give you, you can unmute yourself now and then you can speak up if you have a specific question or remark. No? It should be possible to unmute yourself if you want to speak. Or otherwise, you can send us a message in the Q&A. No. Okay. In that case, we will continue. Great. And so at gold level, you need to implement conservation technologies and best practices with great water and or soil related impacts. you need to take actions to conserve water and/or soil in the supply chain, ensure chemicals that are entering effluent and sludge at final manufacturing facilities are assessed and optimized. And for the platinum level, ever higher requirements, as you can see here. Good. And social fairness, what about social fairness? At bronze level, you need to have a human rights policy in place. You should measure performance at final manufacturing facilities and complete corrective actions for selected issues. And at the final manufacturing facilities, you should also plan for corrective actions for other poor performance issues. At silver level, you need to have social audit performance data that are available. You need to ensure a grievance mechanism is available. At gold level, a third-party verification of materials associated with high risks of child or forced labor, and a responsible sourcing management system in place, and a grievance mechanism is in place. Now I cannot see immediately what the difference is between the silver and gold regarding grievance mechanism, but perhaps we can add that into the presentation before we send it out. For the platinum level, we need to incorporate stakeholder engagement and feedback. We need to collaborate to develop and scale solutions to social issues within the value chain of the product, and ensure that social fairness operates as a core value. So now I have taken you through all the 5 different sections, but there are some general requirements that you are expected to meet as well. And you can see the overview here. So you are expected to have a compliance assurance system in place. And at the bronze level, it's quite a simple system you need to have. You also need to have a strategy or plan towards achieving the next certification level. So you need to have that already when you do the first certification. And then transparency is important. So the information and data should be, to some extent, there are certain elements that need to be publicly available. There are requirements that need to be met regarding packaging, and there are also, if applicable, there are also requirements regarding animal welfare. And let me now take you through some example from certified products. So our first case study is on Ralph Lauren Corporation. They have 3 products that are cradle-to-cradle certified at the gold level under version 3.1, which was one of the previous version to 5.0. And Ralph Lauren, they provide a strong example of how brands can integrate circularity into their operations. They have partnered with Reverso in Italy, a company specializing in high-quality cashmere recycling. And through this partnership, Ralph Lauren has launched a cashmere recycling program across North America and Europe. And what makes this program unique is that customers can return 100% cashmere items from any brand for recycling. And this approach is powerful because it doesn't just apply to Ralph Lauren's products. It opens the door to circularity for the wider industry and customers. And we know from many previous attempts to collect used products, brand-specific collection programs, that very often there are not enough products so that they can really be recycled the way the brand would like it to be. And the program also supports fiber-to-fiber recycling, turning old cashmere into new high-quality yarn. And this, of course, closes the loop and reduces the need for virgin raw materials. And this is really a good example of how design, partnerships, and consumer engagement can work together to drive circularity at scale. And our second case study is on G-Star Raw. The G-Star currently has its denim product cradle-to-cradle certified at the gold level under the version 3.1. And G-Star, they offer an inspiring example of circularity in action through its Certified Tailors program. The program provides free repairs for denim items, covering things like zippers, seams, buttons, and other common issues. And we all know these are the parts of the product that usually are destroyed or damaged. And sometimes this is a reason for throwing away the entire product only because of a zipper, for example. And these services are available through service points in stores, staffed with trained tailors who can ensure high quality repairs. And the goal is to make repair easy, accessible, and attractive for customers, encouraging them to extend the life of their garments instead of discarding them. And by focusing on repair and reuse, G-Star reduces waste, lowers the demand for new production, and strengthens the brand's sustainability profile. So this program is a strong example of how circularity can be integrated into customer service, offering value for both the consumer and the environment. And now let me turn to some practical steps on how to get started. So to get started, begin by assessing your current situation. And I'm speaking now in a general terms about any circularity program. Coming back, by the way, to the Global Circularity Protocol, this is exactly what they do in their first phase. And then define clear goals, choose appropriate frameworks, excuse me. And some simple steps, the first steps include mapping your materials, identifying quick wins, and engaging your suppliers early in the process. And for a more specific guideline to the cradle-to-cradle certification, we have also a suggestion for you, and let's have a look here. So for the cradle-to-cradle, for organizations that are unsure how to start your progress towards the cradle-to-cradle certification, our screening study offers a clear first step. This is a very small project, but it will guide you to the right level of certification. So it's a bit of a comprehensive assessment, but it is still very small in compared to the bigger certification project. And it is designed to evaluate the readiness for certification and identify the most practical opportunities for improvement. So what we offer, we conduct a baseline assessment, reviewing your product portfolio and materials against the cradle-to-cradle requirements, and mapping your current sustainability and circularity efforts. We perform a gap analysis, identifying where your process align or fall short of the cradle-to-cradle criteria, and covering all areas: material health, circularity, renewable energy, water stewardship, and social fairness. And based on that, we create a certification roadmap with prioritized actions to help you meet the standard based on the level that you want to reach, and including then design improvements, sourcing strategies, and system upgrades. And importantly, we also help you assess which achievement level is realistic for your organization and determine which standard version is the perfect fit for your goals and operation. And the outcome is a clear data-driven pathway that reduces uncertainty, aligns your strategy with the cradle-to-cradle requirements, and makes the certification process much more manageable. And this way, you are not just pursuing certification, you are pursuing the right certification for your organization. And here also, regarding the Global Circularity Protocol that Kim mentioned previously, so let me briefly explain the purpose of what we are offering in this context. The main goal is to provide you with clarity on how to actually begin your circularity journey according to the Global Circularity Protocol, especially at the corporate or business unit level. So we already mentioned that the difference between the Global Circularity Protocol and the cradle-to-cradle standard is that the Global Circularity Protocol operates at a corporate level, at a higher level, and the cradle-to-cradle standard operates at a product level. So the certification you get with the cradle-to-cradle is a product certification. And so for many companies, the challenge is not understanding why circularity matters, but rather where to start and how to structure the process. And this is where our approach comes in. What we offer is a comprehensive assessment specifically tailored to help you develop a corporate level circularity strategy. That means we don't just look at individual products or isolated initiatives, but at your organization as a whole, your operations, your portfolio, and your value chain. And at the core of this approach are the 5 stages of the Global Circularity Protocol developed by the World Business Council for Sustainable Development and the UNEP One Planet Network. And so these stages, they provide a structured step-by-step methodology, guiding you from understanding your current baseline to identifying opportunities, setting priorities, and ultimately implementing and tracking progress. So rather than tackling circularity in an ad hoc way, this gives you a clear roadmap to move forward in a systematic and measurable way. And some of you are aware that we also have services where we offer double materiality assessment and strategy projects. And this approach here with the Global Circularity Protocol actually matches very well with our double materiality assessment and strategy approach. And so we can use the methodologies that we have developed for these services as well. And now, before I move on to the Q&A session, I would like to present our company to you as well. Here you can see where we have local teams. We are based in Germany. Our company is based in Germany, but as you can see, we have local verifiers and trainers and consultants in many different areas, in many different regions. And then about us, we are now more than 10 years old, already 10 and a half years old, and we are around 80 people globally. And we offer really both supply chain services and we offer also strategy services. In that case, thanks so much for joining this webinar. You will also find our contact details here when we send out the presentation, or you can take them from here. And with that, I would like to thank you so much for joining this webinar, and I wish you a really good rest of your day. Thank you.
Yes,
Bye-bye.
thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.